change the titles of today's episode in getting and having a conversation with Sharon backstage. So for today, we're going to talk about women in trucking. Has it started? Where has it come to? And what do we have left to continue along the path of creating equality and getting more women involved in trucking?
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
All right, my friends, here we go. Today we've got Sharon Sires. Sharon,
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great.
I sometimes forget that part of it where it's like, good morning. It's like, no, let's just dive right in. You know, as I was saying to you backstage, and we didn't really get to finish the conversation, so I'm really excited to finish it actually on air. For the first time today, putting out a post, I actually hesitated. And I don't know. I mean, I'm still trying to, in depth inside of me, figure out why. But it was, we're in a predominantly male-driven business, or a male-dominated business, if you will. And I was trying to get across in my post how important women are in our industry. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, part of the conversation today is the difficulties women go through in our industry. How can we bring more women in? Because as I said to you backstage, I am where I am today because of the women in my life. Number one, my wife, primary, no matter if ands or buts. I met my wife in transportation. It was kind of one of these things where I walked around the corner and we saw our eyes, and I actually told my business partner at the time, I said, I am going to marry this woman. and he kind of laughed at me and says, oh, she's way out of your league. And in the end, I ended up marrying her. But, so then there was my operations team. Some of the women I've met along the way, like Nicole Glenn, Christy Snell, Shaylin Dixon, Sarah Barnes Humphrey, like all of these people that I've met along the way that have been instrumental in, mentoring me, growing my business. I'm sorry, but in my opinion, y'all, when I say that with all due respect, women are so much more organized than men.
Well, we are, and we listen. Yeah. So we're wired different. Mm-hmm. We think differently than men do, which is a good thing. So mm-hmm. if the three of us were in a meeting and we were in there for an hour, and then after the meeting, we discussed what happened, we would have gotten totally different things from that meeting. I would have heard this, you would have heard that. But if you have both in the conversation, you can put those together and come up with some fabulous results. I've been on that soapbox for years because the men and the leaders in the C-suite, they like to have the men in there because they don't think women understand, or we're not smart enough, or
is it they still don't like that?
It's a lot of, it's still like that in some companies. It's getting better, but we still have a ways to go. But I will say this in defense of them, a lot of times women do it to themselves because women do have a tendency to be dramatic. We haven't quite learned how to not get emotional. So those are things as you get older, you learn. And that's where what I'm doing now, I'm trying to help women overcome those things so that they can become good leaders. And so anyway, but yeah, we still have a ways to go. But yeah, it's still pretty prevalent in the industry.
And is that what Save Our Sisters is all about? Is helping women overcome those intermediate challenges to get into the business or into the level of business that they desire, kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's a mentoring program on different levels: leadership, personal, just entry level. Just to, when I started back in the 80s, very few women were in the industry. Mm-hmm. And it was a challenge. I'm telling you, because I didn't have anybody to mentor me. I didn't have anybody to help me.
Now, did you start in sales, or did you start in like office or operations?
I started in sales. and I didn't know anything. I mean, nothing about the industry. So they just kind of threw me out there, and I made a lot of mistakes. But by making mistakes, you don't make those same mistakes again. I mean, I moved some freight that I should have never moved. I didn't know it was illegal. And so, but I learned.
I think we've all been there at one point in our career where it's like,
it came out because I'm like, I did the same thing. I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? I'm sorry.
Before we go any further, let's address the elephant in the room. Y'all know DJ was late today getting on the show. So I'm going to call my main man DJ out for being late.
I'm so sorry. Oh man, yeah. Meeting was running late. I am so sorry.
You had to do your hair. I get it. You had to do your hair. I get it. So Sharon, I've got a question for you, because back in the 80s, getting into trucking in sales, I can imagine, above and beyond just maybe moving freight you shouldn't have moved, some of the difficulties you must have faced with sexism and all these other things down the road. I mean, I really can't even fathom how difficult it must have been for you. Can you just give us and the audience kind of like
some examples?
Well, and I mean, sure, if you want to share examples, 100%, but even further than that, like some of how that made you feel. Because I think that's more important, that those inner feelings that sometimes, and I'll give you a perfect story. When I first started in the industry, I was just turning 17. And the owner of the company I started with had said, like, you can't go see customers. You're way too young. In essence, he says, you still smell like pee, in a joking manner, Yeah. But he said, and I said, well, why? And he said, because here's the thing, Dan. If they have kids older than you, and it made logical sense at the time, if they have kids older than you, they're never going to trust you that you can do the business with them. And that made sense. But do you know what happened? That carried well into my mid-30s, where I still in my mid-30s, I said, I'm too young. I'm dealing with 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds in charge of millions of dollars in business. And that lens that I had on, that I was not old enough. I'm at that point, I'm 20 years in the business. And I'm like, but that was irrelevant compared to my age. Mm-hmm. So, and for me, that stuck with me for a long time. I'm just curious to see, like, some of these perspectives or some of these lenses that people see you with, some of the things you hear, like, what were they? How did they make you feel? And how long did it take for you to crush them and actually move past them?
Well, fortunately, I've got one of those personalities where I don't let it bother me too much. But I will say I was intimidated a lot. When I was since I started out in sales back in the 80s, the salespeople, the men, were buying the freight. I mean, they would take them, give them gifts. They'd go to strip places. They did all of that. I couldn't do that. I mean, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to buy the freight. So, and I would walk into an office and literally, of course, I was a lot younger then. I couldn't get them to raise their eyes to my face. They were looking at different parts of my body. And at one time I just got so tired of it. I said, hey, up here,
up here.
My eyes are right here, guys.
So I had to learn that I had to be a little bit tough or I wasn't going to make it. And so what I ended up doing was, the reason I was working for a company selling freight. And I was doing okay, not great, because I was struggling and I was nervous. And I had to have a talk with myself right before I went in on a cold call, like, okay, they can't kill you. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. I literally had to have that conversation every time I went into a new place. But then I thought, okay, you know how to do this. You've been a mother. You've raised, you've got children. You're in PTA. You do all of these things. Just bring it to the business. I mean, I had worked in a bank. I had worked in education. And so when you talk to a customer, build that relationship first and then get into the business. So that's kind of how I did that. But then it was still really tough. So I decided, somebody approached me about becoming an agent for a freight brokerage. And I had only been in the business for a couple of years. And I thought, you know what? I can do this. I think I'd like this better. So I rented a little 100 square foot office space. I had a phone, a legal pad, a fax machine, and a household good guide. If you don't know what that is, it's a map, and you have to figure out your miles from this book, because there were no computers then. And so I just set goals. And when I first started, I go, okay, I want to do 1 shipment a day. That's my goal. And then when I started doing, and I was doing it all over the phone. I wasn't out on the street anymore. I was just doing it I wasn't having to deal with all that other stuff. And I still am friends from 30 years ago with customers that I did business with back then, because we built relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then my business kind of got into a little bit of trouble, and I won't go into all the details of that. But one of my carriers said, Sharon, you're using my trucks all the time. We want to open up a brokerage. Why don't you come over here and work for us? And so he was the owner of that company was a good mentor. And he was like you, Dan. He liked women, because he knew that, he actually knew we were smart, and he allowed me to do things that I wasn't able to do in other companies. I'd actually interviewed before he called me in with the company. Said they told me they wouldn't hire me because I was a woman, because they felt like women would cheat on their expense reports. And I thought, what?
That's totally opposite of what probably would happen, by the way.
Yeah. And so, so those are the kind of things. And so you do become either a little insecure, or you become a little hardened, and you lose a little bit of your trust factor, because you don't really know who you can trust, and you feel a little defeated most days. But I was fortunate. I stuck with it. I wanted to quit a lot of times, because I thought this just isn't worth it. But one day, our company got a call, and they asked if we had any women salespeople, and they wanted to see a woman. They wanted a woman to call on them. So they sent me over there, and I went in there, and he set me down, and he said, you must be wondering if I'm a creep or why I asked for you. And I said, well, yeah. And he said, I have found that women work 10 times harder than men, and that you are going to take care of my freight if I give you this business. And I want a woman to take care of my business, because I know I don't have to worry about it if you're taking care of it. And it kind of woke me up that, okay, there are people out there that feel the same way. And so then it's time to start telling women it's okay to get in the industry. You can do this. Women are good listeners, better than men, because men are always not all men, but in my experience, men are thinking about what they're going to say next versus what the customer is saying.
And 99.9% of men.
Yeah. I mean,
you're okay saying that. Nobody's going to backlash on you. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to backlash on you for that. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had that happen with one of my male sales person, because we went into a meeting together, and I found out if you just let the customer talk, they're going to tell you everything you know. You don't have to ask a lot of questions. And this customer was just spilling his guts, and he was telling us everything about his company and what lanes he moved and what kind of problems he was having. And as soon as he finished talking, my counterpart started asking him questions about what he just told us. And it was embarrassing, honestly, because I thought, seriously, you weren't listening to a word this man was saying. And so over the years, women have gotten into it. We still have issues. And just a few years ago, I will tell you this, it's the president of one of the companies I work for was getting ready to hire somebody to be a director in the company. and he liked this one person, but they were young, didn't have a lot of experience. And he called me in and asked me if I would mentor him. And I said, that's an insult, right? And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, I'm good enough to mentor him, but I'm not good enough to get the position. And he just kind of looked at me, and it was kind of a wake-up call to him too, because they don't, a lot of times these leaders don't think about those types of things.
Yeah, because
they want you there. They know you're good. They don't want to lose you, but they don't want to put you in a higher position a lot of times.
That's interesting, because
hearing
that from the outside in, I sit there and I say, he obviously honors you, what you bring to the table, what you can do, what you've done, what the future is. Mm-hmm. Almost as if he was pre-programmed not even to consider you for it, kind of thing. And that's like, that kind of just takes me back for a second. I love the fact that you said that too, because I think that is classic. And what happened in the end? Did it change his thought process on it?
No.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow. So maybe it was more of he wanted a male in that position. He did.
But so now, there's been so much in, with social media and the news and diversity. I think a lot of women, and I don't like this either. I mean, and I'm probably going to get some backlash on this. I don't want women getting put in positions that they're not ready for just because they're a woman, And I think a lot of that is happening as well. You're seeing more women,
100%.
but they're not really qualified. And
Can I share with you an example, Sharon?
Uh-huh.
So my son's going to be a firefighter. Did his course, and the instructors in the course in Ontario, they said, here's the deal. Women and minorities will get the positions before white males. And I asked the question, okay, now there's not a racist or sexist bone in my body. So everyone watching and listening, don't go there. This is not what it's about. I'm always a big proponent of the most qualified people get the job.
Me too.
If I have a fire, I'm a 190-pound male. If I have a fire in my house and I get knocked out by smoke inhalation or whatever, I need somebody to come in that can carry me out, right? There were women in his program that were, and again, don't everybody go crazy here, that were, 105 pounds, could barely lift 60 pounds. They would give the males like a 150-pound thing to hold up against the wall for a minute, and they would give the females like a 50-pound thing to hold up against the wall for a minute. Now, again, there's women in firefighting that are 10 times stronger than me. Don't get me wrong. There is serious firefighting.
Yeah.
But to be told by instructors, hey, listen, like a white male, don't expect to get a position anytime soon. To the point where my son was doing a golf course job, and there was a guy there about 6'2", 270 pounds, just completely jacked. He had high 90s in his firefighter program, and he lost the position 4 times in a row to women that had low 60s and passed the physical by 1 point, right? So again, his whole concept was I could pick humans up 1 arm each and carry them out. And we're giving positions to people that are not qualified for them. I don't care who you are. Like, I don't care what color, what race, what creed, what sex. I don't care.
Right.
I like transgender. It doesn't really matter. It really is irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. If you can do the job and you have the talent, you have the skills, you have the ability, then you deserve the job. Right. If you can't do it because of whatever reason, but you're going to get it just because of a sex or a creed or a whatever that is, I got a hard time with it. I really do. And this is why I believe most managers fail. It's because no matter what, male, female, doesn't matter. Most managers are unqualified for the positions they're in. if I
Right.
could say that without getting my head cut off.
Well, and that's true. And, you have to, to me, when you're going to be promoted, you need to earn that promotion. And usually by earning that promotion, that means you've gone through all the hard knocks. I mean, you've paid your dues and you can bring something to the table that somebody that doesn't have the experience can. And I, again, I've been overlooked for positions when I was totally qualified for it. I had probably more experience than anybody interviewed for the job, and I was prepared. I brought in a presentation. I showed what I could do and the growth and what I expected to bring to the company. And then they ended up hiring a man who had never managed, who had never done outside sales, who had never done anything, and I'm going, why did he get the job? And he was only there 6 months because he couldn't make it. I mean, he didn't have the experience. And so, and this happens all the time. And, now I did, when I worked for this one company, I had 29 direct reports. I was running this branch in Dallas, and the women were just brutal. I mean, they were like the drama queens, and I'd walk in and they'd be backstabbing, fighting. You'd have to like pull them apart. And one day I had, out of 29, half of them were women. And one day I just had it. And I brought them all into the conference room, all the women. And I just lost it. I said, you are setting women back in this industry 100 years. I said, stop it. I said, this is the reason you can't get promotions, because nobody wants this BS. Nobody wants to deal with this. And now they think we're all like this. And I said, and the next time it happens, you're getting fired. I don't care what HR says, you're out the door, because we're not doing that in this office. And it stopped for a while. Of course, it went back, but but I did have to fire somebody to make my point. But so, like I said earlier, a lot of times women do it to themselves, and I'm trying to stop it. I'm trying to get them to understand they can't do that. But not all women are made for leadership positions either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I think and what you're talking about, Sharon, and first off, I got to congratulate you for sticking to it no matter what things you've dealt through. I think what we got to realize in the end is we're all no matter color, sex, like Dan said, it doesn't really matter. You said something powerful though before I go on to that and kind of touching on that. I think in sales, in life, and everything we do, and you said it, and it's something that I believe to my core. If taking risk, making the call, doing that thing, you said it's not going to kill you. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. They're going to, maybe you screw up, say something dumb, but in the end, you're not going to die. You're just going to learn from. It could be a failure, and you learn from it, and that is so powerful, because that's what I live by. Look, I try everything and do everything I do, because what's the worst that's going to happen? It might fail. I'm going to learn something from it, and I'll try something else. And it's just
you know
try.
what, DJ?
It's not going to kill you.
It's never a failure. Like, and
No,
I think that part of,
absolutely.
I mean, not that you meant it in an ill way, but I think part of the fear for a lot of people is that word failure. When really nothing's a failure. If you try something and you learn,
it's not failure.
You're so much further ahead than the person that never tried and doesn't learn. Right? Like even in sales, again, and I think we talked about this on, what are we today? Wednesday? So Monday. I losing track of days. I think, we talked about this even from a sales perspective, Sharon, right? Like, you go into a sales call, it doesn't work. You learn something. It's awesome. You learned not to use that approach the next time. Or you go, you try something new. You try and move new business. It's like, okay, that didn't work. But that business and that niche might not be a quote unquote, failure. Just figure out a different way to move it.
Yeah.
A different way to produce the result that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of this, Sharon, you were saying it's that, women do it to themselves and this kind of stuff. I also think women might have done it to themselves. So have the younger generation done it to themselves when it comes to, but I also think the lens in which we see needs to change.
Yes.
And not just towards women. I think in general, our lenses need to be almost minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, month, but like not month by month or year by year. Mm-hmm. I had a conversation with somebody inside my inner circle where he had sent me an email last night saying, Dan, it's amazing. I hired an 18, 19, and 22-year-old. And these guys are killing it. Where you talk to people and they say, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, man, they don't work. They want everything instantaneous. The society that they've been in with social media is instantaneous. You put a post out and people like, I'm famous, I'm good. Or people don't like it. It's like, but it's that lens. And I went back to him this morning. I said, here's what I think. The younger generation, when it's a stepping stone, they're going to do just enough to get a paycheck because it's not their career. It's not what they really want to do. So if they're in logistics and they have no desire for it, I shouldn't even say the younger generation. Let me correct myself because that's inaccurate. Anyone who doesn't have a passion for what they're doing will not put the time, energy, and effort in to make it a career. It's a stepping stone. It's something that they're just going to do. And typically, when we look at people that just work, right? DJ, you and I have said it many times, job versus career. Typically, the stats, I think, were like 97% do just enough to not get fired. But we shouldn't take everyone in that lens. So as much as women have done it to themselves, because, they're, I got to watch what I say. Well, do I really need to watch what I say? Like, really, this is the whole thing. Remember, Sharon, we were talking about this, DJ, before you got on. I was saying that I'm about to hit post on that post this morning that I put on LinkedIn. And I'm looking at it saying, like, am I being correct? For the first time ever, I didn't just go send. You know what I mean? It's like I stopped and I read it, and then I reread it, and then I took this word out, and I'm like, no, that sounds like it's too, and I guess it's just one of those topics that I'm fearful about. And so, Sharon, does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So here's what, if I have to tell women anything on this show, is get a good group of people around you. Network. And so, and I joined the transportation clubs, because that's where you meet people, like-minded people who are going through some of the same struggles as you are. And so I was very fortunate this last year to meet Nicole Glenn and Christy Knichel and the Ladies Leadership Coalition. I mean, I just love being a part of that. Well, these women are such a good group of, we help each other, and we're helping other women.
Stars there.
Yeah. And so I'm very fortunate to be a part of that. And so I do know that if I hadn't gone through the things that I've been through over the years and learned what I've learned and experienced the failures and the successes, I wouldn't be able to be a part of that group. I wouldn't, and so I'm really proud that I'm doing that. And Christy Knichel is the one that actually said something to me that hit home. And she said, Sharon, why are you still doing what you're doing? You've done these other things. Why aren't you doing that? Because I can tell that's your passion, which is what I'm doing now. Because literally my management style is mentoring and coaching, always has been. I've had bosses that don't like that. They say, you're just the mom of the office. And I actually posted something on LinkedIn one time, and my meme was mom, 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 because you get that from your kids. Mom, 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 mom.
Tapping on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Mama,
and so
mama. No.
Yeah. And so, and I kind of wrote about that that's where you get a lot of your leadership training from, is being a mom or a dad, because you have to handle crisis at home, dealing with different emotions from different personalities, because my three boys all had three totally different personalities.
And as they grow, it's different.
It's different. And so
the situations evolve as well.
So I might have pulled some of that experience, not even realizing it, into my management style. But I got like over 10,000 reactions from that post because it hit home with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I said, you may not like my management style, but I have 3 very successful sons. So I must have done something right, And so I said, I can't apologize. I'm not going to apologize for the way I manage. It works. Our branch is making money. We're just different the way we manage people. So I've just used my style. It's worked for me over the years. And I think a lot of times you can be a mentor and not even realize you're mentoring because people are watching you. They see how you react to certain situations, and they'll remember that when something like that arises, when they have a situation like that in the future. So I've had some really good employees that I've helped mentor and get to, and that's what I'm the most proud of, that I hear back from old employees and they're very successful now. They've moved up, and it just makes me proud that maybe I had just a little bit of something to do with that. I had a boss one time that told me, and I've never forgotten it. He said, Sharon, always hire people smarter than you because they'll make a star out of you. Don't worry that they're going to take your job. You want them to take your job because that means you're going to move up. Let them help you rise to the top. And I've never forgotten that. So when I've interviewed people, I've always tried to get the brightest and the smartest and given them the freedom to be creative that I wasn't allowed to be as I was, moving into the industry and moving up through the years.
The first one is always the one that has to blaze the path, and it's always the tough.
You do.
Right?
It's
always tougher on the first kid than the third kid. The third kid's like, oh, you'll take care of yourself, man. Just start cooking eggs at 4 years old. You'll be all good. Whereas the first kid, it's like, oh my God, no, bubble wrap. What do you mean? Is there anyone sick at your house? Oh, they are, and you gloves and like a big scarf and everything. The kids walking. Yeah.
But I think what you're seeing now about women in the industry is they're starting their own businesses.
Well, actually, you know what, Sharon?
Awesome.
So we've got to. I just want to make a shout out to a couple of people here. So Jeffrey, good morning, brother. Morning, Jeff. Good to have you here again.
Good
Gary,
morning, Jeff.
Always good to have you from Hope, Arkansas.
Man,
Gary. So there's two comments actually that I want to get to. Jeff says, words to live by. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And Jeff, you're 100% right. I see women in the industry, the courage to get in and continue. You look at how many women truck drivers there are now.
Courage, yeah. You have the courage to keep going. Good for you.
I couldn't even imagine what it would be like for a woman on the road. Like I was on the road when I first got into the asset side of it, and I was appalled by how I was treated. And I couldn't even imagine how women would be treated because there's a few more factors, like Sharon said, eyes here and so on and so forth. Yeah. Ryan comes back with read yesterday that 5,890 new trucking authorities were granted in the last 7 days. I do see more diversity and inclusion for 2022 in our industry. 100%. And then Gary comes back and says, amen, Sharon. My mentor, Jim Smith, told me the same thing in 1982, and it has served me well throughout my career. Mm-hmm. There we go. Absolutely. Now, I'm going to let you two chat for a minute because, as I said to Sharon before, I might need to jump out because the old puppy's outside and it's like -5 and I hear him barking. So as much as I'm like, he didn't come in when I asked him to come in, he's going to stay out there. I got to go get the little guy. So I'm going to let you two go at it.
No worries. So Sharon, again, thank you. You were made for this. You can tell by the way you talk. I mean, you just the way you are presenting and listening to others. Everything you're saying, right? I think what we need to learn from this already is it doesn't matter if we could just pretend that whoever is on the other side of the information that's going out, it doesn't really matter what it's coming from, guy, girl, black, white, purple, green, blue. It doesn't really matter. If the message is there, it should be the same no matter who it's coming from. And I think the problem is, and there's we're taught it in sales. You're not supposed to judge. You shouldn't judge. Don't judge because they're dressed. They look like a bum that they don't have money because you don't really know that. Don't judge because they're this color or they're this age or they're this. but we don't. And we're taught that in sales, but why don't we press that more in life? I mean, it's life, and everybody should have the same chances. Either you can do it or you can't. And like Dan said, it really doesn't matter. The best person in the end and who's most fit for it should get it. And you definitely have proven that from everything you've done. And yes, so obviously the stereotypes. Women are generally, because it's not all the same, more nurturing than guys. That's why I think that they do better in sales, because again, it's that attention, the listening, like you said, that those kind of things, and the actually caring. That makes a difference. But there are guys that are very nurturing or more womanly, or whatever you want to call it. Then
more feminine. You can say more feminine.
Yeah, whatever you want to say. But again, it's the nurturing though, and that's what might make them that way. It's the caring. It's those things. And so it really doesn't matter. It's just fitting the right mold for what we do. And what we do is just trying to, like you said, listen. They'll tell you what the problem is if you just listen and you're a good listener. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we talk. I heard that, and man, that has done me well as well. But yeah, you're made for what you do. And
and I told women, I think where women kind of took a wrong turn several years ago was they felt like they had to be like a man. They had to do, and they were trying. And so if they were assertive, they, too aggressive, they were called a bitch, where men, that's what men were supposed to do. It didn't work. And so what I've told, I said, just be yourself, just be yourself and be professional. That's a pet peeve of mine, is not being professional. There used to be a company in Dallas. I'm not going to say the name. I don't even know if they're in business anymore, but they hired all young women, legs up to their armpits, long blonde hair, dumber than dirt. And they was, I ran into them out on the street a few times. And,
sorry, Sharon. I tried to hold that in because I knew the dumber than dirt was coming at some point in that conversation. I apologize. Sorry. Go on, Sharon.
But they would send them out on the street and say, do whatever it takes to get the business. They would last about 6 months. They'd fire them. Then their accounts would become house accounts, and they'd hire some more women. And so this went on. And there, there used to be jokes about roadway jokes. I don't even know if anybody remembers Roadway, but there were jokes about this company. And I called on a customer one day, and he said, "Oh, I went to lunch with this sales rep from this company." And I said, "Well, you did?" I said, "Well, that, good." And he said, "You want to know where she took me to lunch?" And I said, "Okay, where?" And he said, "She took me to a lingerie show at this restaurant." I said, "To a lingerie show?" I said, "She just offered to do that?" And he goes, "No, I asked her to take me. I just want to see if she'd do it." I said, "You've never asked me to do that."
Wow.
He goes, "Oh, hell no." He said, "I would never ask you to do that." So, but that's the kind of things women go through. That's an example.
That's kind of degrading, is it not?
It is.
Like degrading. Not the fact that he didn't ask you, but the fact that he would even ask a woman to do that.
I tell him to,
you tell him to go take a long walk off a short pier with lots of rocks in his shoes. Yeah, I know, I understand that. But like, to me, that's I recall a similar situation. There was at one point in my career, I was in charge of just over 20 something salespeople, and one of them left, and the owner said, "Okay, you need to go visit all of her accounts." I said, "Okay, the typical, send the wolves out to, and I remember going into this one gentleman, and we're talking, and I said, "Okay, so, I said, honestly, like, how was the service?" He goes, "Oh, the service sucked, but she was great to look at. So I kept it working with her." And I said, "Okay, so moving forward, like, he goes, if she comes back," he goes, "I got to tell you, like, I'd rather look at her than you. So I'm going to use her." And I was just like, okay. So, to each his own, I guess, at that point. But to me, it was like, immediately, it wasn't the fact of business. It was the fact of, like, does she know this? And if she knows this, that's kind of degrading yourself just to get 2 LTL shipments a week. Like, is really $500 a week where you make 30%, you know, so you're what, $180 a week before tax? Is that worth being like treated like a, and again, don't crucify me, people, but be treated like a piece of meat? Like,
Yeah.
to me, you're worth so much more than that, just as a human, as an individual.
Well, listen, to back that up though, I don't think it's just pretty girls. I mean, they're gonna represent themselves that way, and it might go that way. But guys do the same thing. I mean, a good-looking guy. So just using an example, Ghostbusters, the female movie of Ghostbusters uses a pretty handsome-looking guy as the secretary. That it's just to look at him. They even say it. It's to look at him. It's a joke, and I know it's a movie, but it happens. Good looking or not, it goes back to the point that we always talk about. Not all money is good money. Not all customers are the right customers for you. But more to what Sharon said, it's like-minded people. If we find like-minded, like we all three, I believe, are, Sharon, you fit right in with us. Your beliefs, your things of listening, what made you successful to this point of being a successful mentor, a successful teacher, and successful in sales is you have the same core. It doesn't matter that we two are guys and you're a woman. We're still like-minded and think the same thing. You didn't use your body or your looks to get you business, and that's where the difference is. And so, I think it's insane, but it does go both ways.
And it's a great industry, or I wouldn't have stayed in it this long. And I've learned so much, and that's what I tell people. I said, as long as I've been in this business, I still learn something almost every day. I've never heard of this before, and I have to do some research. And it's just fascinating to me. And the people that we get to meet, and I'm meeting some incredible women right now. Incredible. And I'm proud.
Let's not forget you met 2 incredible guys today too, Sharon.
Well, I did. I do. No, I have some great male friends in this industry who have treated me well and have looked out for my career, and they give me recommendations, and they tell me, they're honest with me. And that's what you need. You need people to be honest with you and tell you if you need to change. And I've gone through, and we all do, we go periods of times when we're going through some bad times. Something may be happening in your personal life, or you're just not feeling it. You're tired, you're burnt out. And if I've made one of my major mistakes I've made in my career is not taking enough time off. Is not taking long vacations because you're afraid that it's going to be too much to come back to. You've got this business, because once you become successful and you start having business, you got to take care of it. And and sometimes your customer only wants to talk to you. And so you've got to set some boundaries. And so I've learned that. I mean, that was one of my biggest mistakes. It's not setting the boundaries as far as my time is concerned. But
Sharon, we've got a couple of minutes left before we end the show. Share with us what's next. Like, what do you see as the next? I'm not even going to say evolution, but for women in trucking, what's next? What should any woman, any lady watching this that is thinking about getting into trucking or thinking about getting into logistics or supply chain? I mean, listen, 12% of the global GDP. There's a lot of money to be made for everyone if they serve at the highest levels.
Right.
What's next? Like, what can they expect? What's next? What do you see on the horizon? And what's the positive outlook for women in this industry?
So, when I started, there were no educational programs for anybody in transportation. I think the University of Tennessee and the University of Maryland had transportation courses. Other than that, nobody knew, nobody planned on going into trucking. You didn't grow up and say, "Oh, I want to work in the transportation business,"
Right.
So you just kind of fell into it. What's encouraging is in Dallas, where I'm from, you have the North Texas University, and they have an absolutely wonderful supply chain logistics program. And so I've hired interns from there because they have to do like 286 hours before they can graduate. And so when I brought an intern in, they have to complete 10 different items, which is accounting, sales, operations, just all different things. So during those 286 hours, I would put them through the paces. So I think what we need are more women to get involved in those kind of programs. There's a lot of guys, but not a lot of women. And so I think we need to do more to sell that there are programs out there. They can learn about it, and they'll be a step ahead of everybody else going into the industry, and then you find companies to be an intern for, and if you're good, they're going to hire you. They're going to keep you. It's a good way for companies to vet out good employees, because if they're a good intern, you want to make sure that you want to keep those people. And if they're not good, you wish them well and send them on their way. So I think we need to educate more. And I think as women, we need to help mentor other women to, be available and do more programs, more podcasts like this, just so that they know what's involved and what's out there, and that they can make a really good living doing this. And it's a good profession, and it's a good career. And we have to educate the men. And where I want to go with my company, at some point, I want to get in with HR departments to get them to let me come in and speak to the male leaders of the company on how to deal with women, and then deal with the women on how to deal with women, or the different age groups. Because right now we've got boomers, we've got Gen Xers, we've got millennials. Now we got this new one coming up. And you have to be able to deal with all those different age groups, because they're all different. And so education just in management too, and which includes women, it includes men. And we've just got to be, and I think you're going to see a lot more women starting their own companies. I really do, because they're smart enough. They've been in the business long enough. They know what to do. They know what not to do. They've got customers, and I'm seeing more and more of that. And there's a good group, women in trucking, where they have the truck drivers and they have the professionals. They just had they just had their convention this last month in Dallas. And I'm seeing more and more of my friends getting voted Women in Transportation of the Year, which is very exciting. Awesome. So I think we're getting to a point where we're going to see more and more success for women in the business.
Good to hear. I also think there's a systemic issue in our industry of supply chain with marketing properly.
Yes.
Right? Like marketing for truck drivers, for professional truck drivers, how important that career is over the typical stereotypical, you high school, didn't graduate high school, go be a truck driver kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I also think when I look at just the industry as a whole, and I try to pay attention to every facet of the industry, there's a big issue with marketing, because I don't think anyone's marketing pinpoints the real core benefits of women in trucking. If you really want to explore your creative side, if you want to explore your organizational side, if you want to explore your side that's going to be able to create friendships that last forever, like these kind of key hot buttons, mm-hmm. for me anyways, if I wasn't in the industry, that's what I'd be looking for. Like, how do you create? How do I get to use my creativity every day? Like, for me, that's incredible. And I think the marketing needs to go back towards women's strengths. Their conflict resolution abilities, they're all of this. And not to mention, you see a lot of women after children that, if they've taken time off to raise children, to get back into that corporate world is a big fear. Like, it's a big concern. And I only say that just because for the most part, women are the ones that, boy, I might be getting in a lot of trouble today, but for the most part, I think it's mostly women that are like, no, I want to be the one to take care of the kids. I know there's men that do it too, but it's that reintegration into the workforce, that I think is, because in logistics, you can work from home. You can
Yeah.
sell from home. You don't have to go back into an office. And there's that integration period that I think there's a huge section of the population, both male and female, I'll say that just so I don't get slaughtered here, male and female, that can get reintegrated through logistics, through sales, through operations, through virtual assistants. There's so many opportunities these days, and I don't think the logistics industry is marketing in the right way. I'll just
No, I agree. I agree 100%. And I tell you, some of the best ways I found women to hire, hiring women in the past, I've hired most of the time with no experience whatsoever. One of my best sales reps I ever had was a waitress at Chili's. We found her at Chili's, and she was really good.
Customer service oriented. Servers make great salespeople.
The first company I worked for, that's every single salesperson and most of the ops people all came from restaurants or bars.
Yeah.
And,
she was selling me
$1 billion company.
Desserts I didn't want. I thought, gosh, she could sell anything, and so, so look for people when you're out and about in the stores that you shop at, give somebody an opportunity and say, hey, we'll train you. We're going to help you. And so that's kind of where I am now because, and I'll shut up, but, I always feel like we all have a purpose that we're here on this earth for.
I'm going to echo Jeff's thank you to you. Thank you, Sharon, for being on the show. You bring a wealth of knowledge to help women who are considering getting into the logistics industry. Jeff, thank you for making that comment. And you know what, Sharon, you really do. I want to thank you so much for being here. You know what? We're going to have to bring you back because I don't think the 50 minutes we've been on air right now does it justice. So I apologize if we didn't do it justice for everyone watching and listening, but we will bring Sharon back because no doubt this is a conversation that needs to be continued.
Just, my motto is be kind, help others, and you'll be successful.